Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're continuing the build on the '07 R6. For today's procedure, we are going to basically be, well, probably taking off a lot of these fairings and stuff that has to come off anyhow. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get down and take apart most of the stuff in the engine to try to get it to turn over. So basically what that entails is that'll be us changing the oil in it, pulling off the airbox, pulling up the spark plugs, and then seeing if we can get the thing to actually crank. So why don't we go ahead and start that? I'm going to start by pulling off these fairings and seeing if I can get off this airbox real quick. Alright guys, so there's the fairings off the bike and out of our way, which is a good thing, obviously. Now I think what we're going to have to do is get this airbox off. I guess I'm going to have to disconnect the quick connects on the air intake fuel injectors. There looks like a wiring harness that goes inside here. AIT sensor looks like, or IAT sensor. From what I can see there. And then we got some Allen bolts down in here. Looks like we'll have to take out, and hopefully we can pop this whole thing off. So let's go ahead and try that. Alright, so just loosen the Allen keys. Looks like there's a hose here that's got to be pried off, so let's see if we can pop that off. Now let's see if this thing lifts off. Well, for the most part, we got one more hose back here we'll pull off. Well, there it is. It's free. Alright, so one good step. Now, it looks like the next step is to take off fuel injection and maybe the throttle bodies. Well, let me see what I can get into. Okay, pause on that. So before I take this stuff off, one thing I noticed is I got some damage here on the throttle body, which is not good news, not terrible. Also, it looks like, you see the rust inside on some of these bolts? It looks like weather has been to these things, like maybe it's been raining on this bike, so I won't be surprised whatsoever if there's water in this case, which isn't necessarily good news, but it's not necessarily bad news depending on how much got in. Also, if you look, it's kind of hard to see. You can kind of see, if I can get my finger in there, the spark plugs are here in the front, and it looks like I can't get to them this way. I almost need to take off the radiator. So before I end up messing with this, I'm going to go ahead and take off the radiator because that's damaged anyways. So let's go ahead and pull that off and see if we can get to the plugs. Then we'll drain the oil. Alright guys, so the radiator is pretty straightforward to take off. On this side, which would be your right hand side sitting on the bike, kind of hard to tell. Anyhow, it was kind of slid off already where the bracket was. The one thing I had to disconnect on this side, since both fans were pretty much disconnected probably from the impact, is the lower radiator hose here, and then on the other side of the bike we went ahead and took out a bolt here. We had this radiator pipe here. There was another fan disconnected on this side as well, and then we have a bolt. You can see it. It's kind of hard to see. It's way back in there. It's down in there if you can kind of see it. We need to take it off, and this thing should drop down if I can get to it. It's like impossible to get to this thing. Alright, well there's the bolt. If I can get it out. Ah, there it is. Well, there's our radiator. So let's look inside. Well, there's our spark plugs. That's what we need to get to, so that's our next step. I guess now what I'll do is disconnect all the coils, pull out the coils, and see if I can get those plugs out real quick. Take a look at them. Alright guys, so I got the coil packs out and discovered some more damage. Obviously, that's typical. You probably can't tell on video. This side of the engine is sitting quite a bit lower than this side. This side is obviously the one that took real impact. In fact, to get this last coil out, I had to break a big chunk of the section of the frame out. It was already broken, but the coil wouldn't basically cover or clear it. So what I've noticed, we've got a split hose, not a big deal. Some of the wiring though has been spliced, whatever that goes to, and then some sort of like valve cover type thing right here is shattered. I don't know what that is, so I'll have to find a replacement for that and then look inside there to make sure there's no pieces laying down inside it, whatever it is. Other than that, I don't see any damage on the face of the motor yet. A lot of times you'll see damage on the head. I don't see really any damage back there, so that's good news, I guess. A slight ding in the lower pipe, not a big deal. And then the radiator pipe on this side, I noticed, now that I pulled it out, it's kind of destroyed too. So we thought we could have, that we probably would have had to fix that or replace it anyway, so not a big deal. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to get these plugs out, and then I'm going to drain the oil. So plugs are going to come out, like I just said. The next thing will be to drain the oil from the bottom, and then I'll have to pull this cover off here, along with the shifter linkage, and then the oil filter's right behind here. We'll spin that out and get that out. Once all that's done, we'll see if we can get this thing to turn over. So follow me, let's move forward. Alright guys, so the first plug's out. If you can see that, it's definitely wet with water, so as we figured, there's probably water in the cylinders. It's okay as long as it's not been in there too long. You know, it looks a little corroded, but nothing real bad. The spark plug came out somewhat easy, so I'm assuming it's going to be alright. So let's take the other three out, and then we'll see how much water's in the oil. Alright guys, so I kind of decided before I drain the oil, I'm going to try to turn this thing over without the spark plugs in it, because I feel like water's going to shoot out of it. I don't know for sure, but I feel like it's going to. And I hate for any water to get compressed down in the oil that I just put in. So here's our new key switch. Just go ahead and turn that over to on. Let's see if we can see here when I hit the start button if it does anything at all. This battery's got enough juice. Okay, nothing. I may have disconnected it somewhere or another, some kind of line. Let me see what I can do to get this thing to fire. Alright guys, so I got to jump back on it, and it's still not turning over, which is not good news. Initially when I got it, just turning the key on, I did hit the start button to see if it did anything, and it did turn over a couple times. So I don't know if there's something lodged in there. Maybe one of the valves are stuck. I don't know. So all I can really do is maybe put some antifreeze inside the cylinder, so let it sit for a minute while I change the oil, just to see if we can get this thing cranking and turning over. So let's go ahead and move forward and let me see what I can get done. Alright guys, so there's a small inspection window on the side of the motor here. If you uncover it, it's got a 12mm bolt in it. I'm able to get about a quarter turn each way, but then it stops. So I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, I'd say either pieces of that are down inside the head, blocking a valve, or something has gotten into the throttle bodies. Now, I went ahead and just loosened up the oil drain plug so we can see what this oil is going to look like, maybe. And if it's more than 2.5 quarts, there's definitely water in there. Yep, you can see the water coming out right now. It always sits at the bottom. See all that water? There it is. It's usually what you don't want to see. But, like I said, hopefully if our components aren't rusted up, worst case scenario, well, best worst case scenario is let it get filled up with automatic transmission fluid and let it eat apart some of that rust. See if we can get this thing to turn over, but I may have to drop this motor before I tinker with it anymore, because I don't want to screw up the valves or the heads on it. So let's go ahead and let this thing drain, then we'll move forward. Alright, so the oil is pretty much all drained out, guys. And actually I misspoke. I thought the oil filter was underneath it, but that's the sprocket. I don't know what I was thinking. The oil filter is actually down here. But remember, I told you we have to take off the shifter linkage. So what I usually do to keep this thing aligned, I kind of take a pen, oh, if I can do this on camera here, and run it with the crack on there to know how to put it back on. Then once we loosen the bolt and take it out here, we should be able to slide that right out. Yeah, see, we uncover our oil filter, which it looks like, yeah, we have to swing this thing around a little bit, we should be able to get to it there. So let's go ahead and get that out. And I think I have a little bit of change of plans. I think I'm going to pull the exhaust off. Ultimately, I'm just going to pull this motor out of here so we can actually get a look at it. And then what I'll do is I'll pull all the parts off the bike, get it all salvageable so we can use what we need off it, should that be the route we're going. And then we'll start putting things together and we get all our parts and get the motor working. So let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, so I took the oil filter off and drained it, and obviously it had no water in it, which tells me obviously the bike was never ridden with water in it, which we kind of figured anyways. So I'm going to leave it on there for now before I put the new one on. Just leave it on there to kind of hold anything that's inside there. To get this exhaust off, you can see there is, I believe, roughly 8 bolts around the header pipe there. So we go around. I had one bolt holding on the slip-on, just pulled that off now. I've got a 12mm holding on right there, and I thought there was one in the middle. I could be wrong. There may be one in the middle, but I'm going to pull those out here. Actually, you know what? There's a 12mm on the other side of this as well. There's one on each side. That's where they're at. So 8 up front, 2 in the back, and then we have to take out our O2 sensor, and we're going to pull this exhaust off. Alright guys, so there's the exhaust off. Don't forget to, inside your exhaust headers, you're probably going to have these gaskets right here. It's like a copper gasket or something for sealing. A lot of times they are stuck inside the cylinder block of the head where the exhaust manifold meets. Just make sure you pull those out, you don't lose those, you'll end up needing them. Alright, so next point of business, we need to get some of the stuff disconnected from the motor itself. Fuel line obviously already is. Quick disconnected from the intake already. We got to pull this harness here, which has a plug here. A couple twist ties, or not twist ties, but zip ties we got to get off there. Get that disconnected. I've got a throttle position sensor, it looks like right here. And then I'll have to disconnect the clutch cable up there as it's connected to the side case here. It's easier to disconnect the cable up there than it is down here. And then what we'll start doing, because I think that's all it's connected right now. Maybe a knock sensor underneath here. And we'll start pulling out the bolts that mount the engine in. But before we do that, we want to put a jack underneath this thing to make sure it's supported. We can hold it, and then we'll slowly let it come down. And we'll put like a little caster assembly underneath it so we can maneuver it and move it around. Kind of check it out. So let's go ahead and move forward. All right. Well, so far this bike hasn't disappointed in the fun factor. We knew that was damaged, and then I figured out those 2 spliced wires are coming from that. Another spliced wire here, and then of course our throttle cable, if you can see that, is jacked too, as well as bent up here. So we got 2 plugs to, actually I guess since I was disconnected already, it doesn't matter, but we got to take this plug off and the throttle cables, and then again just these couple zip ties, and then I'll start undoing the bolts to pull this engine out. Alright guys, so we pulled all the bolts of the frame, disconnected everything I could see. The only thing that left is the chain that's holding it on. I'm looking for the master link, and as I spin this wheel, I don't see a master link anywhere. And this sometimes happens to OEM chains. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a angle grinder. I'm going to cut the center on both sides. And if I decide to use this chain again, which I don't know that I will, but if I decide to, then I'll just have to buy a master link. No big deal. It's fairly cheap. So let's go ahead and take that off. All right, chain's cut as you can see. So now it's pretty straightforward. All you got to do is, well, our stupid ghetto license plate thing's in the way, but typically you're going to pry this chain out, just pull it back. Now I just saw the motor drop forward, so we know that it's loose now. I should be able to go ahead and wedge it out. The frame is kind of holding it somewhat because it's smashed. I should be able to wedge it out though and get it onto that roller thing down there. Let's go ahead and move forward. All right, so I'm glad I caught this in time, and I kind of suspected this, but there is another wire right here, and it's actually holding the motor up right now, so it feels like with the tension on it. And there could be a couple others, some ground wires and stuff, so I'm going to try to disconnect some of this so I can get this thing out. But FYI, you might want to check that out before you go yanking on your motor. So there you have it, guys. Engine is out, ready to be checked out, and the bike is, well, I don't know how it's standing. In fact, I'd like to drop kick it. I know that'd make good content, but then I'd destroy my floor. I wouldn't be so happy. Anyhow, there's a bike all separated. Now you can kind of get a better idea of this frame, and I literally have no idea how it's standing. I guess it's just connected by this little tiny bit of nothing right here. So that's a wrap for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. I know it wasn't a whole lot of DIY, it's more or less troubleshooting the project, but after we figure out what the problems are with it and make sure that it's repairable, we'll get into that DIY, that kind of the building and customizing it and stuff like that. So if you could, leave a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so, and leave a comment below if you have any questions.